"Choose," the Duke of Ravensmere said. "Confess that you poisoned the royal hounds, or leave my estate with nothing." Duchess Eliza looked at the husband who had once trusted her with every life in his kennels. Beside him stood Lady Cecily, already wearing Eliza's green hunting cloak and holding the silver whistle that had never left Eliza's possession until that morning. "I will leave," Eliza answered. "But when the king rides tomorrow, do not let her sound 3 short notes." The Duke's expression hardened. Another threat? A warning. He ordered the doors opened and banished her before the entire household. As Eliza stepped into the courtyard, the king's lead hound strained against its chain, not toward her, but toward Cecily. Sewn into the hem of the stolen cloak was a small pouch, releasing the scent of wounded deer. 3 short notes would send every trained hound toward that scent, and Cecily planned to stand beside the king when she blew the first 2. The hound's name was Bracken, a black and tan beast whose shoulders reached above Eliza's knee. He had never lunged at a person without command. Now, his claws scraped furrows through the wet gravel as 2 kennel boys fought to restrain him. "Take him away," Cecily cried. "No." Eliza turned at the carriage step. "Let the Duke see where he looks." Bracken's eyes remained fixed upon the lower edge of Cecily's cloak. The Duke of Ravensmere descended the stone steps. Julian's face revealed no doubt, only anger sharpened by humiliation. The king and 30 noble guests would arrive before dawn. 3 royal hounds had died under his roof, and the woman he had chosen to oversee the hunt was being challenged before every servant in the household. "Search the cloak," Eliza said. Cecily pressed one hand against its skirt. "Must I submit to being touched because a guilty woman invents another accusation? It was my cloak this morning. It belongs to the mistress of the royal kennels now." Eliza felt the words strike, but she did not lower her eyes. "Then prove it carries nothing dangerous." Julian glanced from Cecily to Bracken. For one instant, uncertainty crossed his face. This was the moment he could have ordered the garment searched. Instead, he took the leash from the kennel boy and dragged Bracken backward. "My wife trained these animals to answer her gestures," he announced. "This performance proves only that she prepared them to frighten Lady Cecily." Eliza stared at him. 6 months ago, he had stood beside her in the snow while she saved Bracken from a fever. Julian had held the lamp, warmed cloths by the stove, and promised that no one understood the animals of Ravensmere as she did. Now vanity mattered more to him than memory. "Put the dog in the lower kennel," he commanded. "He will not run tomorrow." That order frightened Eliza more than her banishment. Bracken was the only hound refusing Cecily's scent. A footman placed Eliza's small travelling case inside the carriage. It contained 2 gowns, a prayer book, and 12 shillings. Her jewels, correspondence, horse, and pin money had all been retained pending an inquiry into the poisoned animals. Cecily approached while Julian spoke to the kennel boys. "You should have confessed," she whispered. Eliza watched the silver whistle between Cecily's fingers. Its edge carried a thin reddish mark, as though it had recently been rubbed against sealing wax. "You stole that from my desk. Your husband gave it to me. He gave you the right to use it. That does not explain how you took it before he made his decision." Cecily's smile vanished. It returned quickly, but Eliza had seen the fear beneath it. "By tomorrow evening," Cecily murmured. "No one will care when I first touched it." A servant closed the carriage door between them. As the vehicle moved through the courtyard, Eliza looked back through the rain-streaked window. Cecily lifted the whistle experimentally. 1 short note cut through the air. Every hound turned its head. A second note followed. The animals rose together, their bodies rigid, their noses testing the wind. Bracken threw himself against the lower kennel door so violently that one hinge cracked. Cecily did not sound the 3rd note. Not yet. Eliza gripped the window frame. Her father, the late royal huntsman, had taught her that 3 short notes meant only one thing: pursue the marked quarry until it fell. She had removed that command from the royal hunt years ago, because once the chase began, even a rider could not stop the pack. Only 2 people knew the abandoned signal. Eliza was one. Her father had been the other. Yet Cecily had known the first 2 notes perfectly. "Stop the carriage," Eliza shouted. The driver did not answer. She struck the roof. Stop. His whip cracked, and the horses broke into a gallop. That was when Eliza saw they were not traveling toward the village. The carriage had turned onto the old forest road, where no household servant had any reason to take her. Across the floor lay a thread of green wool from her stolen cloak. Beside it rested a second silver whistle. This one was blackened by fire and engraved with her father's initials. He had supposedly died 6 years ago, but the leather cord attached to the whistle was still warm. Eliza closed her fingers around the warm leather cord. Someone had placed the whistle inside the carriage only moments before she entered. Either her father had not died in the lodge fire 6 years ago, or someone wanted her to believe he had survived. The carriage struck a rut, throwing her against the door. She pulled the handle. Locked. Ahead, the forest road narrowed between ancient oaks. The village lay east, but the driver was taking her north toward the abandoned hunting lodge, where her father had supposedly burned to death. Eliza lifted the second whistle to the window. The metal smelled faintly of pine smoke and camphor. Fire alone could blacken silver, but it could not preserve a leather cord. This cord had been replaced recently. Then she noticed 3 shallow cuts along the mouthpiece. Her father had marked his whistles that way whenever a hound was trained to pursue a human scent instead of game. The carriage slowed at a fallen tree. Eliza did not wait. She wrapped her shawl around her fist and struck the window latch. It broke on the second blow. Cold air rushed inside. The driver cursed and reached down toward the window. Eliza caught his sleeve and pulled. He lost his balance, dropping the reins. The horses veered from the road, and one wheel plunged into the ditch. The carriage tipped violently. Eliza threw herself through the broken window before it overturned. She landed hard among wet leaves. Pain shot through her shoulder, but she forced herself upright as the driver freed his leg from the wreckage. "You were ordered to take me to the village," she said. He drew a short knife. "I was ordered to make certain you never reached it." Eliza raised the whistle. The driver laughed. "There are no hounds here." "No," she replied. "But there are horses." She blew one long piercing note, the signal her father had taught every Ravensmere stable animal to associate with fire. The carriage horses reared in terror. The snapped traces whipped across the driver's chest and knocked him into the ditch. Eliza seized the reins of the nearest horse, pulled herself onto its bare back, and fled through the trees. Behind her, the driver shouted that she would never survive the night. He did not follow. Eliza reached the village shortly before darkness. Mrs. Vale, the widowed keeper of the small posting inn, opened the door and stared at Eliza's torn gown. "Your Grace? Not tonight." Eliza stepped inside. "Tonight I am simply a woman who needs a locked room and a trustworthy messenger." Mrs. Vale had once worked in the ducal kennels. When her husband died, Eliza had secured the lease that allowed her to keep the inn. She asked no unnecessary questions. Within minutes, Eliza sat near the kitchen fire while the innkeeper cleaned the cuts on her hands. "I need a message carried to the king's equerry," Eliza said. "It must reach him before the royal party leaves the western estate. The Duke controls every rider between here and Ravensmere. Then send someone he will not notice." Mrs. Vale called for her 12-year-old grandson. Eliza wrote only one sentence: "Do not permit the third note, and do not allow anyone wearing green to ride beside His Majesty." She sealed it with plain candle wax, then handed the boy the blackened whistle. "Show this only to Sir Matthew. Ask whether he recognizes the initials." The boy slipped out through the kitchen yard. Eliza watched until darkness swallowed him. Securing the king's safety should have eased her fear, but Cecily's earlier words returned to her. "By tomorrow evening, no one will care when I first touched it." Cecily did not merely intend to frighten the king. She expected something irreversible to occur during the hunt. Mrs. Vale placed a bowl of broth before Eliza. "3 hounds dead," the innkeeper said quietly. "Is it true? They were poisoned." "But not by me." "I know." Eliza looked up. Mrs. Vale crossed the kitchen and opened a flower cupboard. From behind it, she removed a small wooden ledger. "The dismissed kennel boy brought this here at noon. He was afraid the Duke's men would search him. Inside were the feeding records for the previous 7 days, the the same records Julian had ordered burned. Most entries were written in the kennel master's heavy hand, but beside the names of the 3 dead hounds, someone had added a tiny circle in pale blue ink. Eliza had seen such circles before. Her father had used them to mark animals chosen for special scent training. Who made these marks? Eliza asked. The boy could not say. But yesterday, he saw Lady Cecily entering the lower kennel with a man wearing the old royal hunting uniform. Eliza's hand tightened around the ledger. Her father's uniform had been buried in an empty coffin because no body had ever been recovered from the fire. A knock sounded at the back door. 3 slow strikes. Then 2. Mrs. Vale went pale. That is not my grandson's signal. Eliza closed the ledger and reached for the kitchen knife. The door opened before either woman touched it. A tall man stood outside, rain dripping from the brim of his hat. A burn scar crossed one side of his face, but Eliza recognized the grey eyes immediately. Her breath stopped. Father, the man stepped into the firelight. If Cecily sounds that 3rd note, he said, the hounds will not attack the king. Eliza stared at the father she had mourned for 6 years. They will attack the person the king has been tricked into trusting. Eliza kept the kitchen knife raised. Name the person. Her father removed his hat. Fire had drawn the skin tight along his left temple, but his voice remained the same voice that had taught her never to approach a frightened animal from behind. The Duke of Ravensmere, the knife, lowered by an inch. Julian, the king will ride beside him tomorrow. Cecily means to mark your husband's saddle with the scent hidden in your green cloak. When she sounds the 3rd note, the pack will tear him from his horse in front of his majesty. Mrs. Vale bolted the door and covered the windows. Eliza's thoughts raced back to the courtyard. Bracken had lunged towards Cecily because she wore the scented cloak, but the pouch could be removed and fastened elsewhere. If Julian dies during a royal hunt, Eliza said, suspicion falls upon me. I trained the hounds. My whistle gives the command, and the poison bottle carries your initials, her father replied. Cecily has prepared your guilt carefully. Eliza placed the feeding ledger on the table. Why did she mark only the 3 dead hounds? Because those 3 refused the altered command. He turned the blackened whistle over in his palm. 6 years earlier, he had discovered that someone was retraining royal hunting dogs to follow human scent. Before he could identify the conspirators, the old lodge had been set ablaze. A groom had dragged him from the flames, but the burns left him feverish and disfigured. When he recovered, he learned that false orders carrying the royal seal had already declared him dead. Why did you not come to me? Eliza demanded. I tried. No. Her voice broke despite her effort to steady it. You let me stand beside an empty coffin. You let me believe I had no family left. I sent 3 letters. I received none. Her father looked at the silver whistle Cecily had taken from Eliza's desk. Then someone inside Ravensmere intercepted them. The answer did not erase 6 years of grief. Eliza wanted to embrace him and strike him in equal measure. But the king would ride at sunrise, and Julian would wear the marked saddle unless she stopped him. She shut the ledger. We returned to Ravensmere. Her father blocked the door. The Duke has banished you. If you go back without proof, he will have you arrested. He may arrest me after he survives. That loyalty is wasted on him. This is not loyalty to my husband. Eliza's gaze hardened. If Cecily murders a duke in front of the king and places the crime in my hands, every kennel boy, groom, and servant who ever worked under me will be questioned as an accomplice. I will not abandon innocent people because Julian abandoned me. Her father studied her face, then slowly stepped aside. They left the inn through the stable yard. Mrs. Vale provided 2 horses and a heavy brown cloak that concealed Eliza's torn gown. The forest route would bring them to the lower kennels unseen, but halfway there, they found the messenger boy's pony wandering without a rider. Eliza dismounted. A royal blue ribbon lay tangled around a thorn branch. It had been tied around the message she sent to the king's equerry. There was no blood, only small footprints leading toward an abandoned charcoal burner's hut. Her father reached for her arm. It may be a trap. It is a child. They approached from opposite sides. Through a crack in the wall, Eliza saw the boy tied to a chair. The dismissed kennel boy lay unconscious beside him. A masked man stood over the hearth, burning Eliza's message. Eliza picked up a stone and threw it into the trees. The man turned toward the sound. Her father entered through the rear opening and struck him across the wrist. The man's pistol discharged into the roof. Eliza rushed inside, seized a burning branch, and drove it toward his face. He fled through the doorway and disappeared among the trees. Eliza cut the children free. The younger boy clung to her sleeve. He kept asking where we hid the whistle. The dismissed kennel boy regained consciousness and stared at Eliza. "Your Grace, I saw Lady Cecily put something beneath the Duke's saddle blanket. I tried to tell him, but he ordered me off the estate." "What did she place there?" "A little cloth packet. Green, like your cloak." Eliza felt anger rise beneath her ribs. Julian had dismissed the only witness who tried to protect him, because the boy's account challenged Cecily's story. Did anyone else see her? The new kennel master. But he works for Lady Cecily. Her father searched the masked man's discarded coat. In one pocket, he found a small glass vial bearing Eliza's engraved initials. In the other was a folded schedule of the royal hunt. One location had been circled: St. Hubert's Bridge. The bridge crossed a deep stone ravine less than a mile from the lodge. If Julian's horse panicked there, the fall alone could kill him. The hounds would make his death appear savage and uncontrollable. Then Eliza noticed a second handwritten instruction beneath the route. "After Ravensmere falls, escort the grieving widow to his majesty." "Grieving widow," her father said. "Cecily is not his wife." "Not yet," Eliza replied. The schedule revealed the true ambition. Cecily did not merely want Julian dead. She expected to appear before the king as the woman Julian had intended to marry after casting Eliza aside. If the crown recognized her claim or accepted forged proof of a secret marriage agreement, she could gain access to Ravensmere's private estates and everything hidden within them. Hooves thundered outside. Eliza extinguished the fire and pushed the children behind the woodpile. 6 armed riders surrounded the hut. At their head was the Duke's steward, holding an arrest order signed by Julian. "Duchess Eliza," he called, "you are charged with escaping lawful custody, attacking a household servant, and conspiring against the royal hunt." Eliza looked at the signature. Julian had been given another chance to question what he was told. Once again, he had chosen not to. She folded the hunting schedule and hid it inside her glove. Then she opened the door. "I will come willingly," she said, "but take me directly to my husband." The steward smiled. "His Grace no longer wishes to hear you speak." "Then His Grace may listen while I save his life," Eliza replied. The steward ordered 2 riders to bind her father and escort the boys back to the village. Eliza alone was placed beneath guard and taken toward Ravensmere. She did not resist. The hunting schedule remained concealed inside her glove, and the blackened whistle hung beneath her borrowed cloak. Cecily believed both objects had been recovered or destroyed. For the moment, that mistake gave Eliza an advantage. They entered the estate through the servants' gate shortly before midnight. The great house blazed with candlelight. Footmen carried silver trays through crowded corridors, while royal servants inspected the guest chambers. No one looked closely at the mud-stained woman being hurried toward the lower cells. Eliza counted every turn. When they passed the saddle room, she heard a horse striking its stall door. Julian's grey hunter. The animal had smelled the packet hidden beneath its saddle blanket. Eliza stopped. "That horse will not carry the Duke tomorrow." The steward pulled her forward. "His Grace gave orders that you were not to interfere. The saddle is marked. You have already poisoned his dogs. Must you accuse his horse as well?" Eliza turned so sharply that the guards tightened their grip. "Remove the blanket and let the horse smell it. If he remains calm, I will enter that cell without another word." The steward hesitated. Men loyal to Julian watched from the passage. Refusing such a simple test would make him appear frightened. At last, he nodded to a groom. The groom approached the grey horse and lifted the saddle blanket. The animal screamed. It reared, striking the stall partition with both forelegs. A small green packet dropped from beneath the saddle and burst across the floor. Pale powder scattered over the straw. Every hound in the nearby kennels began barking. The steward's face lost its color. "Do not touch it," Eliza warned. "Order the groom to change his coat and wash his hands with vinegar. Burn the straw outside the kennel walls." She crouched near the packet without handling it. The stitching was fine, and even done with green silk, drawn from the hem of her stolen cloak. "Who prepared this saddle?" The groom swallowed. "Lady Cecily's new kennel master brought it himself." "Where is he?" "He left for St. Hubert's Bridge an hour ago." The steward stared at the powder. For the first time, his certainty weakened. Eliza rose. "Take this to the Duke." "I cannot." "Why?" "His Grace signed an order granting Lady Cecily complete authority over the kennels and the royal hunt until the inquiry is concluded. No servant may challenge her instructions." There it was, the consequence of Julian's betrayal made official. He had not merely trusted Cecily, he had given her the authority to control the dogs, horses, routes, and servants surrounding the king. "And if you disobey her?" Eliza asked. "I lose my position. If you obey her, your master may lose his life." The steward looked away. "Lock her below," he ordered. Eliza was taken to the old wine cellar beneath the east wing. The guards removed her cloak, but failed to search the lining of her glove. They locked the door and left one lantern outside. She waited until their footsteps faded, then unfolded the hunting schedule. The paper carried no signature, but a smear of blue sealing wax marked one corner. It matched the wax she had noticed on Cecily's whistle. Eliza held it near the bars. Something beneath the written route caught the lantern light, faint indentations made by an earlier message written on the sheet above it. Her father had taught her to reveal such marks with charcoal. She had none, so she scraped soot from the lantern's metal cap and spread it lightly across the page. Words appeared beneath her fingers. "Ravensmere must die before he revokes the transfer." Eliza read the line twice. Cecily's plan depended upon the authority Julian had signed over to her. But why would his death preserve it? A temporary household order should end with him, unless the document he signed contained more than he understood. Footsteps approached. Eliza folded the paper into her sleeve. The door opened, and Julian entered, alone. He still wore the black evening coat in which he had banished her. Exhaustion shadowed his face, but anger held his shoulders rigid. "You attacked a driver," he said. "You fled custody, abducted 2 boys, and returned carrying a man who claims to be your dead father. The driver tried to kill me. He says you caused the accident." "Of course he does." Julian stepped closer to the bars. "Cecily believes you arranged the powder beneath my saddle so that you could pretend to discover it. Ask the groom who saw her kennel master deliver the saddle." "I did." "He now says he cannot be certain who gave it to him. Someone had frightened or paid the boy already." Eliza's grief hardened into clarity. "Did you read the entire document you signed tonight?" His expression changed. "What document?" "The one giving Cecily authority over the royal hunt." "I knew what it contained." "Then tell me why your death would prevent you from revoking it." Silence filled the cellar. Eliza drew the schedule from her sleeve and pushed it through the bars. Julian read the hidden sentence. His jaw tightened, but he did not immediately dismiss it. "Where did you obtain this?" "From the man your steward sent to murder 2 children." "My steward denies sending anyone." "Then someone is issuing orders in his name as well as yours." Julian looked down at the soot-darkened page. Eliza saw the precise moment doubt finally entered him. She also saw pride rise to smother it. "This proves someone intends to harm me," he said. "It does not prove Cecily is responsible, or that you are innocent." Eliza's fingers tightened around the bars. "You found poison carrying my initials. You found my whistle in Cecily's hand before you gave it to her. A hound challenged her scent. A packet cut from my stolen cloak was hidden beneath your saddle. Your own hunt schedule places you at the bridge where the attack will occur. How much truth must stand before you stop looking around it?" Julian flinched, but only for a moment. "The king arrives in 4 hours. I will not create a scandal based upon your accusations." "You are not avoiding a scandal. You are protecting your pride." His eyes met hers. She spoke more softly. Cancel the hunt, Julian. If I cancel it now, the court will believe Ravensmere cannot protect the king. And if you proceed, Ravensmere may prove it cannot protect anyone. He folded the schedule and turned toward the door. Julian. He stopped. 3 short notes, Eliza said. That is all Cecily needs. He left without answering. An hour later, the bells above the stable yard rang. The royal party had arrived early. Then, through the stone ceiling, Eliza heard a whistle. 1 short note, a pause, then the second. The hounds erupted above her. Chains rattled. Men shouted. Boots pounded across the courtyard as the royal hunt moved into confusion. Eliza seized the iron bars and called for the guards. No one answered. A 3rd note could come at any moment. She pulled the blackened whistle from beneath her dress. Its 3 carved marks caught the lantern light. If her father had trained the original pack with this whistle, it might produce a tone slightly different from Cecily's stolen one. Eliza blew 2 long notes, the old command to lie down. The barking changed. Some hounds fell silent, but others continued throwing themselves against their kennel doors. Cecily had divided the pack. Older dogs still obeyed Eliza's signal, while the newly trained animals answered only hers. A shadow moved beyond the cellar door. The dismissed kennel boy appeared carrying a ring of keys. Her Grace told me to stay in the village, he whispered, but I knew the servants' passage. Eliza did not waste time asking how he had slipped past the guards. He opened the cell. Where is the Duke? In the stable yard with the king. Lady Cecily told everyone the dogs became wild because they heard your whistle from below. Eliza ran. She emerged behind the carriage house as the first grey light spread across the sky. The king sat upon a white stallion at the center of the courtyard. Around him waited soldiers, noble riders, and the royal equerry. Julian rode at his majesty's right. Cecily sat at his left in Eliza's green cloak. The royal hounds strained at their leashes. 6 lay calmly near the kennel wall, but 8 others trembled with unnatural excitement. Eliza stepped into the open. Stop the hunt. Every face turned. Julian's anger was immediate. Who released her? The dogs have already heard 2 notes, Eliza said. Search Cecily's cloak before anyone leaves this courtyard. Cecily pressed a hand to her throat. Your Majesty, this is the woman who poisoned your hounds. The king studied Eliza's torn gown and bruised face. Is she also the Duchess of Ravensmere? She was banished last night, Julian replied. Banished is not unmarried, the king said coldly. A murmur travelled through the riders. Eliza approached until 2 royal guards blocked her path. Your Majesty, the green cloak carries a scent that will turn the pack upon whoever wears it, or upon whatever receives the hidden pouch. 1 more whistle will release them. Cecily held up the silver whistle. This belonged to the Duchess. If it commands an attack, then she created that command. I removed it from use years ago. Convenient. Eliza looked at Julian. You found the packet beneath your saddle. His silence answered for him. The king turned toward the Duke. Is this true? A packet was found, Julian admitted. Its cloth came from my wife's cloak. Because she stole the cloak, Eliza said. Cecily's eyes filled with tears. Your Grace gave it to me. I gave you authority over the hunt, Julian replied, discomfort tightening his voice. Nothing more. Then tell His Majesty what else you signed. Cecily became still. Eliza removed the hunting schedule from her sleeve. A royal guard carried it to the king, who examined both the circled bridge and the hidden message revealed by soot. Julian looked toward Cecily. What transfer does this refer to? She answered with a wounded whisper. You know perfectly well. A servant hurried from the house, carrying a sealed document. Your Grace, this was found upon your writing desk. Julian broke the seal and read. His face changed. The paper he had signed did not merely grant Cecily temporary command of the kennels. Hidden beneath that authority was an appointment giving her control of Ravensmere's private hunting lands, breeding stock, and royal contracts for 7 years, even in the event of Julian's death. You placed another page beneath the order, he said. Cecily shook her head. Your wife must have altered it. Eliza was already outside the estate when I signed. For the first time, Julian defended a fact that favored his wife. But he had done it too late. A horn sounded from beyond the gate. The king's equerry rode forward. "Your Majesty, the road to St. Hubert's Bridge has been cleared. We should depart before the rain returns." "No one departs," the king ordered. Cecily looked toward the gate. A mounted man waited beneath the arch, the new kennel master. When their eyes met, he pulled a pistol from his coat and fired into the air. The hounds' leashes snapped loose at once. Someone had cut them nearly through. The pack surged across the courtyard. Riders shouted and horses reared. Royal guards closed around the king. Cecily wheeled her horse toward Julian and tore the green pouch from inside her cloak. Eliza saw her throw it. The packet landed against the king's saddle and caught beneath the stirrup. Every hound turned toward his majesty. Cecily raised the whistle. Eliza ran. She struck Cecily's wrist just as the whistle reached her lips. The first burst of sound broke into a shriek, but Cecily clung to the chain and dragged Eliza against the horse. "You should have stayed banished," she hissed. Eliza seized the green cloak and pulled with all her strength. Cecily fell from the saddle. The whistle flew across the gravel. Julian dismounted and reached for it, but the kennel master fired again. The ball struck the stone beside Julian's hand. Cecily recovered first. She crawled toward the whistle while the hounds advanced upon the king, following the scent at his stirrup. Eliza drew her father's blackened whistle and blew one long note. 6 dogs dropped. The other 8 continued. Cecily's fingers closed around the silver whistle. Julian stepped between her and Eliza. "Give it to me." Cecily stared up at him. "You chose me. I chose not to question you," he said. "That was my disgrace, not your right." Her expression twisted. She brought the whistle to her mouth. Julian caught her hand, but she bit his wrist and broke free. The 3rd short note rang through the courtyard. The 8 hounds launched themselves toward the king. Eliza did not shout another command. No whistle could stop them now. Instead, she ripped the scented packet from the royal saddle, mounted Julian's grey hunter, and held the green cloth against her own chest. The hounds changed direction. "Eliza!" Julian cried. She drove the horse through the open gate, drawing the pack away from the king and towards St. Hubert's Bridge. Behind her, Cecily began to laugh. The bridge was precisely where she wanted Eliza to go. Eliza drove the grey hunter toward the forest, the scented packet clenched against her bodice. 8 hounds followed. Their paws thundered over the road, close enough that she heard their breath beneath the pounding of the horses' hooves. They were not savage by nature. They had been conditioned to pursue one scent until they reached it. St. Hubert's Bridge appeared between the trees. The narrow stone crossing stretched above a ravine swollen by recent rain. Eliza pulled the reins, but the grey horse did not slow. Then she saw why Cecily had laughed. Oil shone across the bridge stones. The horse's front hoof slipped. Eliza twisted the reins and forced him toward the grass beside the parapet. They struck the bridge at an angle, skidding against the low wall while the hounds closed behind them. She could not outrun the pack, and she could not carry the scent across the oil. So she did the one thing Cecily would not expect. Eliza turned the horse around. The hounds charged directly toward her. She waited until they were 20 yards away, then tore the green packet open and hurled its contents over the bridge. The powder scattered into the ravine. 7 hounds followed the strongest current of scent. They leaped against the parapet, scrambling for purchase. Eliza blew 2 long notes. 3 stopped. 2 collided with them. The remaining pair cleared the wall and vanished into the river below. But Bracken had not followed the powder. He stood in the middle of the bridge, staring at Eliza. His lips drew back. "Bracken," she said softly. The hound advanced. Eliza dismounted and let the grey horse retreat. She did not reach for the whistle. Bracken had been taught to distrust it. Instead, she removed her glove and held out the hand that had fed him through his fever. "Find me," she whispered. Bracken's ears shifted. It was the first command she had taught him as a pup. Not hunt, not kill. Find me. He came forward slowly and pressed his nose against her palm. His body trembled. Then he lowered himself at her feet. Eliza knelt and placed both arms around his neck. Hooves sounded behind her. Julian reached the bridge with royal guards, and Eliza's father close behind. He stopped when he saw the hounds crowded near the parapet, and his wife kneeling among them. "Eliza," she rose. "Do not cross quickly. The stones are oiled." Julian dismounted and tested the bridge with his boot. His gaze traveled over the glistening surface, then down into the ravine. One of the fallen hounds clung to a strip of rock above the water. Eliza's father descended the bank with 2 guards to rescue it. The other animal had already reached a muddy ledge downstream. No dogs had died. Cecily's plan had failed. Julian approached Eliza, but Bracken stepped between them and growled. The sound stopped him more effectively than any accusation. "You saved the king," he said. "I saved the hounds from being used as weapons. And me." Eliza met his eyes. "I warned you before there was anything to save you from." He looked away first. By the time they returned to Ravensmere, Cecily and the new kennel master had disappeared. The steward had found a carriage missing from the east stable. Inside Cecily's room, servants discovered burned letters, an empty strongbox, and Eliza's jewelry case. She had not fled empty-handed. The king waited in the great hall. Mud marked his riding boots, and anger had erased every trace of royal courtesy. Julian knelt before him. "Your Majesty, the failure was mine. You granted control of a royal hunt to a woman whose history you did not examine. Yes, you imprisoned the one person who understood the danger. Yes, and you permitted household orders bearing your name to circulate without verification." Julian's voice lowered. "Yes." The king removed the Ravensmere hunting badge from his coat and placed it upon the table. "Until a formal inquiry is concluded, your family will no longer breed hounds for the crown. Your position as master of the royal hunt is suspended." The loss struck visibly. The royal contract had belonged to Ravensmere for 4 generations. It supported the kennels, the stable workers, and dozens of tenant families who raised feed and trained horses. Because Julian had handed authority to Cecily, innocent people would now lose their security. Eliza stepped forward. "Your Majesty, the workers followed the lawful orders of their duke. Punish the man who gave those orders, but do not starve the families who had no power to refuse them." The king studied her. "What do you propose?" "Place the kennels under independent royal supervision. Let the workers remain. Give me 30 days to prove which animals can be safely retrained and which records were altered." Julian turned toward her. "You would remain at Ravensmere?" "No." Her answer came without hesitation. "I will work from the village kennels. They are outside my husband's authority." The distinction silenced the room. The king nodded. "Granted. The royal payment will go directly to the workers until the inquiry is complete. You will oversee their rehabilitation." Eliza had entered the hall accused and penniless. She left it with royal authority independent of her husband. Julian watched her receive the king's written order. The humiliation he had intended for her had become the foundation of her freedom. But Cecily still carried Eliza's jewels, the original silver whistle, and the documents hidden in her strongbox. Eliza's father entered the hall holding a half-burned letter recovered from the fireplace. "This was written 6 years ago," he said. Eliza recognized the handwriting as his. It was one of the letters he had sent after surviving the fire. Across its corner, someone had written a single instruction: "Do not deliver to my wife. Her grace must continue to believe him dead." The ink was not Cecily's. Julian took the letter and stared at the handwriting. "I know who wrote this." Eliza felt the room grow cold. "Who?" "My mother." Julian read the instruction again. "My mother controlled the household correspondence while I was in France," he said. "She dismissed 3 of Eliza's servants after the lodge fire." Eliza took the letter from him. 6 years of grief had been preserved by one sentence. While she mourned her father, the Dowager Duchess had watched her abandon the kennels, withdraw from society, and become increasingly dependent upon Ravensmere. "Where is your mother now?" the king asked. "At the Dower estate, 20 miles north." "No," Eliza said. Everyone turned toward her. "The Dower estate has been closed since winter. She told the household she was traveling to Bath. Julian frowned. She wrote to me from Bath last week. Did you recognize the handwriting? Her secretary prepared the letter. Then you do not know where she is. The king ordered 2 officers to search the northern estate, and another to seal the roads. Julian offered his own men, but His Majesty refused. You have demonstrated that your household cannot distinguish loyalty from obedience, the king said. Royal officers will conduct the search. Julian accepted the rebuke without protest. Eliza noticed that change, but it did not move her. One moment of humility could not repair years of willing blindness. By afternoon, Eliza had established herself in the village kennels. They consisted of an old stable, 2 fenced yards, and a stone cottage once used by retired huntsmen. The king's order gave her temporary command, but little else. There were leaking roofs, broken gates, and barely enough food for the 6 hounds brought from Ravensmere. The workers arrived one by one. Some carried blankets, others brought tools, grain, or scraps of meat. They had served Eliza long before Cecily replaced her, and now they chose to serve her again. No duke had ordered them. For the first time since her marriage, their loyalty belonged to Eliza rather than to the title she carried. Her father remained near the gate, uncertain whether he had the right to enter. Eliza approached him. You should have returned in person. I feared the men who burned the lodge would use you to reach me. They reached me anyway. He lowered his head. I believed distance would keep you safe. So did Julian. Her father looked up. Eliza's voice softened, but not enough to remove the truth. The 2 men I trusted most decided what I should know, where I should live, and which dangers I was permitted to face. One acted from fear, the other from pride. Both left me alone. I cannot change those years. No. But you can stop deciding for me now. He nodded. What would you have me do? It was the right question. Help me retrain the hounds, she said, and tell me everything you discovered before the fire. They worked until dusk. Her father explained that the altered whistle command had originally been developed during the war to track enemy messengers through forests. The royal kennel abandoned it after dogs injured an innocent courier. Years later, the Dowager Duchess had asked him to restore the method privately. She claimed highwaymen were attacking Ravensmere carriages, he said, but the scent she gave me came from one of the Duke's own coats. Julian's? No, his father's. Eliza stopped brushing bracken. The late Duke had died after falling from his horse during a hunt 9 years earlier. His death had always been called an accident. Were hounds present? The official record says no, but I heard them in the forest after the fall. The possibility was clear, but Eliza refused to accuse without proof. Where is the original kennel register from that year? In a locked cabinet beneath the old lodge floor. If the fire did not destroy it, Cecily may be searching for it now. The blue circles in the recovered feeding ledger suddenly carried a second meaning. The same marking system could connect the poisoned hounds, the altered command, and the late Duke's death. Eliza looked toward the northern hills. The abandoned lodge stood halfway between Ravensmere and the Dowager Duchess's supposed residence. Cecily had fled in that direction. Julian arrived after nightfall without servants. He remained outside the gate until Eliza chose to admit him. I came to return these. He placed her jewelry case on a bench. Cecily had taken the most valuable pieces, but Julian had recovered the remaining items from her room. You retained them pending an inquiry, Eliza said. I had no right to take them. You had the legal power. That is not the same as having the right. Eliza studied him. This was the first time he had separated entitlement from justice. Still, she did not thank him for returning what should never have been withheld. Julian handed her a second document. It restored her pin money, revoked Cecily's authority, and assigned the income from 3 unentailed farms to trustees chosen by Eliza. It was material repair, not merely apology. I signed it before coming here, he said. You need not return to Ravensmere to receive any of it. Why now? Because I finally understand what my certainty cost. Do you? His face tightened. I chose Cecily's accusation because it protected my pride. You had warned me for months that the kennel accounts were wrong. I dismissed you because admitting you were right meant admitting I had neglected my own estate. When the Hounds died, blaming you was easier than facing what I had allowed. Eliza felt the pain of his confession, but she did not offer comfort. You could have searched the cloak. I know. You could have delayed the hunt. I know. You signed my arrest order after someone tried to kill me. His voice nearly failed. I know. Bracken watched from beside her chair, alert, but silent. Julian did not ask forgiveness. Instead, he removed the ducal signet from his finger and placed it on the bench. My mother used household orders because servants obeyed this seal without question. I have given the king permission to examine every command issued under it for the last 10 years. The investigation could expose his father's death, royal security failures, and Julian's own negligence. His family might lose far more than a hunting appointment. It was the first costly truth he had offered willingly. Eliza unfolded the transfer document. In its margin appeared a tiny blue circle, the same mark used in the kennel ledger. Julian saw it too. I did not put that there. Eliza held the page near the lantern. The circle was not ink. It was a puncture stained blue from a copying sheet placed beneath the document. Someone had produced a second version, while Julian signed the first. The page Cecily used was not merely hidden beneath yours, Eliza said. It was copied from it. Her father entered, carrying the blackened whistle. The cabinet beneath the old lodge floor contains the copying frame, he said. If it still exists, it can prove how the orders were forged. A hound barked outside. Then another answered from the distant forest. Eliza listened carefully. 3 slow barks. A pause. 2 more. Her father went pale. That is the signal I taught Cecily when she first assisted at the kennels. You trained Cecily? Julian demanded. Before I understood why your mother had sent her. Eliza moved toward the door. Beyond the fence, orange light rose above the trees. The old hunting lodge was burning again, and with it, the only device that could prove how Julian's authority had been stolen. Eliza reached the lodge before the roof collapsed. Flames poured from the upper windows, illuminating a carriage abandoned near the trees. Its door bore the crest of the Dowager Duchess. She is here, Julian said. Or she wants us to believe she is. Eliza dismounted and handed the reins to her father. The copying frame lay beneath the floor of the old kennel room, but the main entrance was already blocked by fire. Her father pointed toward a narrow ground-level window. The storage passage. Smoke curled from it. Julian caught Eliza's arm. You are not going inside. She looked at his hand until he released her. You no longer decide which dangers I am permitted to face. His face tightened with shame. Then I am going with you. No. If the floor gives way, someone must pull us out. Her father wrapped a wet cloth across his mouth. I know the passage. Eliza does not. She wanted to refuse him. 6 years ago, the same lodge had nearly killed him. But doing so would repeat the choice both men had made for her. Stay behind me, he said. No, Eliza replied. We go beside one another. They crawled through the window together. Smoke swallowed the passage. Eliza kept one hand against the stone wall, while heat pressed through her dress. Ahead, part of the ceiling crashed down, sending sparks across the floor. Her father found the kennel room by touch. Beneath a warped feeding bench lay an iron ring. They pulled. A section of floor lifted, revealing a shallow compartment. Inside stood a small wooden frame, holding 2 sheets of paper beneath a hinged plate. The copying device had survived. Beside it lay the original kennel register from the year the late Duke died. Eliza reached for both. A pistol clicked behind her. Cecily stood in the doorway. Ash streaked her face, and Eliza's stolen jewels glittered at her throat. The new kennel master waited behind her with a burning torch. Put down the register, Cecily ordered. You set the fire too early, Eliza said. We found what you came to destroy. I expected your father to return for it. Eliza's father moved slightly in front of her. Cecily aimed at his chest. Do not make me fail twice. The words confirmed what Eliza had suspected. Cecily had helped set the first fire 6 years ago. You were little more than a girl, her father said. I was a girl promised a future if I obeyed the Dowager Duchess. You were the fool who discovered too much. Did she also promise you Julian? Cecily's mouth curved. She promised I would become indispensable to him. His unhappy wife would be removed. His father's death would remain an accident, and Ravensmere would control the royal kennels for another generation. You poisoned the 3 hounds. They resisted the altered whistle. I could not risk them breaking formation before the king. Eliza glanced toward the copying frame, and the document Julian signed. A convenient beginning. Once he died, the royal contracts and breeding stock would pass into hands we controlled. Cecily's gaze shifted for one fatal instant toward the kennel master. Eliza threw the register beneath the floor and kicked the copying frame toward her father. He caught it as she overturned the feeding bench. The pistol fired. The ball struck the wall. Her father ran toward the passage with the frame, while Eliza drove her shoulder into Cecily. They fell against the burning doorway. Cecily seized Eliza's hair, but Julian appeared through the smoke and pulled her away. The kennel master hurled the torch into the open compartment. The old register ignited. Eliza lunged for it, but flames raced across the pages. Julian dragged her back as the floor split beneath them. They escaped through the window seconds before the kennel room collapsed. Her father emerged carrying the copying frame. Then a shot sounded from the trees. The frame shattered in his hands. Royal officers seized the kennel master, but Cecily had disappeared into the smoke. All that remained of the device was a broken hinge and a blue-stained wooden strip. The register was ash. The apparent proof connecting the forged documents to the late Duke's death had been destroyed. At dawn, the Dowager Duchess's carriage was searched. Inside lay Cecily's cloak, Eliza's missing jewels, and a letter stating that Eliza had planned the lodge fire with her supposedly dead father. The document carried Eliza's handwriting perfectly. Cecily had prepared another accusation before fleeing. The Dowager Duchess was nowhere to be found. By noon, rumors had reached the village. Eliza had poisoned the hounds, escaped imprisonment, summoned a dead man, and burned the lodge to erase evidence of her crime. The facts sounded more improbable than the lie. Julian called the household, the royal officers, and the village magistrate to Ravensmere's great hall. Before them all, he placed his ducal signet upon the table. "My wife did not forge my orders," he said. "I signed them without reading them properly. I gave Lady Cecily authority because I wished to humiliate the Duchess of Ravensmere and remove her from the place she had earned. Every crime committed through that authority became possible because of my choice." The magistrate warned him that the statement could cost him control of the estate during the royal inquiry. Julian did not withdraw it. "I accused my wife publicly. I will correct the lie publicly." Eliza listened without forgiving him. His truth protected her, but it also confirmed his culpability. Cecily had manipulated him. Julian had still chosen cruelty because it served his pride. The king's officers accepted the broken pieces of the frame, but without the register or an intact copy, they could not prove who had forged which orders. Cecily remained free. The Dowager Duchess sent a message from an undisclosed location, demanding a public hearing. She claimed Eliza and her father had conspired to murder Julian, steal control of the royal kennels, and blame 2 innocent women. She promised to present a witness who had seen Eliza train the hounds to attack the Duke. The hearing would take place at Ravensmere in 2 days. "They mean to condemn you using your own skill," Julian said. Eliza examined the forged letter found in the carriage. The handwriting matched hers. The paper matched her stationery. Even the wax resembled the seal taken from her desk. But one sentence drew her attention. "The 3rd note will send Bracken to the Duke, exactly as we practiced beneath the chapel bell." Eliza had never trained a dog near the chapel. She looked toward her father. "Who used that place?" "The Dowager Duchess. She met Cecily there, because the bell covered the sound of the whistle." Eliza read the sentence again. Only someone involved in the secret training could know that location. Yet the forger had placed it inside a letter supposedly written by Eliza. Cecily had tried so hard to sound knowledgeable that she had revealed impossible knowledge. Eliza folded the letter. "Let them bring their witness." Julian watched her. "You have a plan? They expect me to prove the letter false. Can you?" "I do not need to." She placed the blackened whistle beside the forged letter. "I need Cecily to prove it true." The hearing filled Ravensmere's great hall. The king sat at the raised end of the room, with the village magistrate and 2 royal officers. Estate workers stood along one wall. Noble guests and household servants crowded the other. Julian occupied no place of honor. At his own request, he stood beside the table where the disputed objects had been arranged: the forged letter, the broken copying frame, the feeding ledger, the green cloth packet, and both whistles. Eliza entered with Bracken at her side. She wore no jewels and carried no ducal badge. Her authority came from the royal order in her hand and from the workers who stepped aside for her with visible respect. The Dowager Duchess arrived moments later. She wore mourning black, though no death had yet been declared. Cecily walked behind her, with one wrist bandaged, and a calm expression that suggested she had come to witness Eliza's ruin rather than defend herself. A thin man in a former kennel uniform accompanied them. Eliza recognized him as the new kennel master. The Dowager Duchess curtsied to the king. "My son has been deceived by a desperate wife," she announced. Duchess Eliza trained the hounds to attack him, then invented a conspiracy when her crime was discovered. The magistrate lifted the forged letter. "You claim this was written by the Duchess?" "I do. And your witness?" The kennel master stepped forward. "I saw Duchess Eliza train Bracken beneath the chapel bell. She used 3 short notes and rewarded him whenever he lunged at a coat belonging to his grace." Julian's face hardened, but he remained silent. The witness continued. "Lady Cecily discovered the scheme and tried to warn the Duke. That is why the Duchess poisoned the 3 hounds that would not obey her." Eliza waited until he finished. Then she asked, "When did you witness this training?" 6 weeks ago." "At what hour?" "Near midnight." "Was the chapel bell sounding?" "Yes. Her Grace chose that place because the bell concealed the whistle." The Dowager Duchess smiled faintly. Eliza turned to the magistrate. "May the witness remain where he stands." "Certainly." She called for the dismissed kennel boy, who carried forward the feeding ledger. He confirmed that the 3 dead hounds had been marked with blue circles before they were poisoned. "Who ordered you to burn the original kennel records?" Eliza asked. "Lady Cecily's new kennel master." The thin man shook his head. "The boy lies because the Duchess paid him." Eliza did not argue. She simply placed the ledger before the court. Next, Mrs. Vale testified that the book had remained hidden in her flower cupboard from noon until Eliza opened it in her kitchen. The boy had brought it before Eliza was banished, giving her no opportunity to add the blue markings later. The evidence did not yet prove who poisoned the hounds, but it established that someone had selected the victims before Eliza lost her whistle. The Dowager Duchess lifted her chin. "None of this disproves the letter." "No," Eliza agreed. "So let us examine the letter." She asked Cecily to read the disputed sentence aloud. Cecily did so without hesitation. "The 3rd note will send Bracken to the Duke, exactly as we practiced beneath the chapel bell." "You believe I wrote those words?" "I watched you write them." "Where?" "In your private sitting room." "What color was the ink?" "Black." "What seal did I use?" "The silver hunting seal your father gave you." Cecily's answers were precise. Too precise. Eliza looked toward the king. "Lady Cecily claims she watched me write this letter. She can therefore explain every detail without relying upon what others told her." Cecily's confidence wavered. Eliza lifted the silver whistle stolen from her desk. "Is this the whistle mentioned in the letter?" "Yes. And these are the 3 notes." Before anyone could stop her, Cecily blew the signal. 3 sharp sounds cut across the hall. Bracken did not move. A murmur spread through the room. Cecily's face reddened. "The animal has been retrained. Then use my father's whistle." Eliza pushed the blackened whistle across the table. Cecily glanced toward the Dowager Duchess. "Why should I?" "Because your witness claims I used 3 short notes beneath the chapel bell. If that is true, Bracken should respond to the whistle I owned at that time." Cecily picked it up. Again, she blew 3 short notes. Bracken remained beside Eliza. The kennel master laughed nervously. "This proves nothing. The dog obeys only when he smells the Duke's coat." Eliza turned toward him. "You are certain?" "I saw it myself." Julian removed his coat and placed it on a wooden stand at the center of the hall. "Then demonstrate." Eliza said. The witness sprinkled a small amount of scent on the cloth and handed the whistle back to Cecily. She blew 3 notes. Bracken stood. A royal guard reached for his sword, but Eliza raised one hand. The hound crossed the hall slowly. He did not approach Julian's coat. He stopped before the Dowager Duchess. Then he lowered his head and scratched at the hem of her black gown. A small blue-stained pouch fell onto the floor. The room erupted. The Dowager Duchess stepped backward. "It was planted upon me." Eliza restrained Bracken and addressed the court. "The hounds do not pursue a person or a title. They pursue the scent. Yet the forged letter claims, 'I trained Bracken specifically to attack my husband.' Its author misunderstood the method." Cecily pointed at Eliza. "You placed that pouch on her grace when she entered. Then you should be able to explain how it was prepared." "I know nothing of its preparation." Eliza opened the packet. Inside lay powder mixed with dried pine resin. Her father placed 2 covered bowls on the table. "One contains the scent used on the bridge," Eliza said. "The other contains harmless flour. If Lady Cecily truly knows nothing about the preparation, she cannot distinguish between them without releasing the scent." Cecily's eyes narrowed. Eliza uncovered neither bowl. "Which one should be kept away from the hounds?" The hall fell silent. Cecily stared at the bowls. One stood upon a plain wooden board. The other rested on blue cloth. The colors meant nothing. Eliza had arranged them after arriving, but Cecily believed blue still marked the dangerous animals and materials in the hidden system she had used for years. She pointed. "The one on the blue cloth." Eliza removed its lid. It contained flour. Then she opened the plain bowl. The sharp scent of pine resin filled the air, and every hound outside began barking. Cecily had chosen incorrectly, but the Dowager Duchess had not. The older woman had turned toward the plain bowl before either lid was lifted. Eliza saw it. So did the king. "You recognized the dangerous scent before it was exposed," Eliza said. The Dowager Duchess recovered quickly. "I heard the dogs. They barked afterward. Then I guessed." "No," Eliza replied. "You remembered which container your system always used." She placed the original feeding ledger beside the broken copying frame. Both carried the same blue circle. The Dowager Duchess looked at Cecily. It was only a glance, but it contained an order. Cecily suddenly seized the forged letter and thrust it toward the nearest candle. Julian caught her wrist before the paper reached the flame. A royal officer took the letter from her. Eliza faced the court. The letter names the chapel because its true author knew the secret training occurred there. The witness repeats the same location because he was instructed by that author. But there is one fact none of them expected us to verify. She looked toward the chapel windows. "The bell they claim concealed my whistle has not rung at midnight for 11 years. The magistrate leaned forward. "How can that be proven?" The chapel door opened. An elderly bellkeeper entered, carrying a sealed maintenance book. Eliza placed her hand upon its cover. "This record will show who ordered the bell silenced and why only the guilty would claim they heard it." The bellkeeper broke the seal. "The chapel bell was silenced 11 years ago by order of the Dowager Duchess," he said. "She claimed its midnight ringing disturbed the late Duke. Since then, the rope has been secured inside the locked tower." He opened the maintenance book to the signed instruction. The Dowager Duchess's name appeared beneath it. The magistrate turned to the kennel master. "You testified that the bell was ringing when you saw Duchess Eliza train the hound 6 weeks ago." The man looked toward Cecily. She offered him no help. "I may have mistaken the hour." "You said midnight twice," Eliza replied. "You described the bell concealing the whistle because that detail was given to you. You did not witness anything." His face collapsed. The royal officers moved closer. "I was paid to speak," he admitted. Lady Cecily prepared the account. Cecily stepped backward. "He is lying to save himself." "Then explain your impossible knowledge," Eliza said. "You knew where the secret training occurred. You knew the abandoned signal. You identified the blue system. And you knew which 3 hounds had resisted the command before they died." Eliza placed the feeding ledger beside the letter. "Those hounds were not poisoned because they obeyed me. They were killed because they would not obey you." Silence spread through the hall. Her father stepped forward. Years ago, the Dowager Duchess asked me to train royal hounds to follow the late Duke's scent. I refused after learning he, not a highwayman, was the intended quarry. Cecily set fire to the lodge before I could warn him. The Dowager Duchess struck the table with her cane. You have no proof that the hounds caused my husband's death. No, Eliza said. The fire destroyed the register that might have proved it. But your present conspiracy does not depend upon proving the old murder. She pointed to the objects one by one. The feeding ledger proves the hounds were selected before I was accused. The packet cut from my stolen cloak proves the scent was placed beneath Julian's saddle. The altered transfer proves Cecily gained authority because Julian failed to read what he signed. The hunt schedule identifies the bridge prepared for his death. The forged letter contains knowledge I could not possess because the chapel bell never rang, and your witness has admitted he was paid. The king looked at Cecily. Who paid him? The kennel master answered before she could. The Dowager Duchess. The older woman's control finally broke. I preserved this family, she cried. My husband intended to expose the kennel contracts and surrender half our influence to the crown. Julian was weak enough to let his wife rule him. I did what Ravensmere required. Julian stared at his mother. You killed father. I protected your inheritance, and then you tried to kill me to control it. You had already disgraced the name by trusting her. She pointed at Eliza as if competence itself were a crime. Cecily suddenly pushed past a guard and seized the silver whistle. Bracken rose. Stand back, Cecily warned. I will release every hound in the yard. Eliza did not move. You already blew 3 notes in this hall. Cecily's grip tightened, and nothing happened. Eliza continued. Because fear can teach obedience for a time, but it cannot create loyalty. Cecily blew the whistle. No animal answered. Outside, the kennel workers had removed every dog before the hearing began, exactly as Eliza had arranged. The silver whistle produced only a thin, powerless sound. Royal officers took Cecily into custody. The Dowager Duchess was detained with her, pending charges for conspiracy against the king, attempted murder, forgery, unlawful imprisonment, and the lodge fires. The kennel master received leniency only after surrendering the money and identifying the servants who had carried forged orders. The 3 poisoned hounds were publicly recorded as victims, not dangerous animals. Eliza's name was cleared before the same household that had witnessed her banishment. Then Julian stepped into the center of the hall. He did not stand beside her. He stood where an accused man had stood. My mother and Cecily devised the crimes, he said, but they succeeded because I gave them what they needed. I ignored discrepancies in the kennel accounts. I dismissed a truthful servant. I refused to search the cloak. I imprisoned my wife after an attempt upon her life, and I chose public humiliation because her competence wounded my pride. He faced Eliza. I cannot ask you to forget those choices. I will not ask you to return. Before the king and every servant, Julian surrendered permanent control of the royal kennels. He transferred the unentailed village property to trustees selected by Eliza, established lifetime wages for the workers harmed by his decisions, and withdrew every accusation entered against her. The king restored the royal breeding contract, not to the Duke of Ravensmere, but to an independent kennel school governed by Eliza. Her father was appointed its first instructor. Julian retained his title and entailed estate, but lost his royal office, his hunting privileges, and the unquestioned authority his family had possessed for generations. His consequence was not poverty. It was living without the power he had mistaken for wisdom. 3 months later, the village kennels no longer leaked. Children of grooms and tenant farmers learned to handle animals beside the sons of noble families. No command was taught without explaining its purpose. No hound was punished for refusing a cruel order. Eliza lived in the stone cottage overlooking the training yard. Her father occupied a small house nearby. They did not pretend 6 lost years could be repaired quickly, but each morning he asked what she needed instead of deciding it for her. Julian remained at Ravensmere. He wrote once a week. His letters contained no pleas, no declarations, and no demands for an answer. They reported which restitution payments had been completed and which household reforms had been made. Eliza read them all. For 12 weeks, she replied to none. Then, on the first morning of autumn, a carriage stopped outside the kennel gate. Julian stepped down alone. Bracken watched him approach, but did not growl. Julian remained beyond the gate. "I came to deliver the final deed," he said. Eliza examined the document. The cottage and surrounding land had been placed under her independent trustees, beyond his control. "You could have sent this." "Yes. Why did you come?" "To give you a choice in person." The word echoed between them. On the night of her banishment, he had offered two choices that were not choices at all: confess to a crime or leave with nothing. Now he stood without title, authority, or threat to support him. "Choose," Julian said quietly. "Tell me to go, and I will go. Allow me to visit again, and I will come only when invited." Eliza looked toward the training yard, the workers, her father, and the life she had built beyond him. She did not need her husband to rescue her. She did not need to punish him forever, to prove that he had wounded her. But neither would she confuse remorse with repair. "You may return next month," she said. For one afternoon, hope crossed his face, restrained by understanding. "As you wish." "No," Eliza replied, opening the gate only wide enough for Bracken to pass between them. "As I choose." Then she turned toward the yard and blew one long note. Every hound looked to her not from fear, but from trust, and this time no one took the whistle from her hand.